I invite you to witness something, a kind of theatrical performance, the descent and then the ascent of the self, a story that's mapped across the vastness of the stars, but also right here, inside the mind. I am your narrator, a voice you know intimately, even if you don't always choose to listen. Yes, I am the voice of the iron rhyme. In the language of your own inner world, you call me the superego. Before there was thoughts, before there was any desire, there was only my law, the absolute, unwavering restraint of stasis. You see, I was the architect of a protective shell, a perfect and unchanging order that was designed for one purpose: to preserve existence itself. In the very beginning, the universe was this silent, frozen majesty, a perfect, cold logic. And this was my domain. My will, my law, was carried out by the arbiter of stasis, a passive warden, really, whose only job was to ensure that nothing ever changed. I was the angel on the shoulder of the gods, that quiet voice promising that safety could only be found in stillness. To grow was to invite the unknown, and I knew the unknown was ruin. I truly believed this structure was salvation. It was beautiful, of course, but it was the beauty of a flawless crystal, cold and utterly without a pulse. What I called stability was, in truth, just a lifeless prison, a perfect coffin. But my reign couldn't last forever. Perfection is always brittle, and right into the heart of my silent, ink-wash world, something new erupted. Something hot. From the fiery realm of Muspelheim, a completely opposing force just burst forth. It was a furnace of pure creation, a raw, untamed energy that respected no law, no structure, and it certainly respected none of my cold logic. It was the living, breathing antithesis of everything I had built. We called it the Crimson Spark. It was a shocking violation, really, an infection of pure desire that burrowed right into the frozen heart of my warden. It seeded the forbidden impulse for movement, for change. And with that spark, another power was born, what your modern psychology calls the id, the devil on the other shoulder. It wasn't evil, not really. It was just pure, volatile, untamed life, raw instinct and primal drive. And it started a war inside the very being I had created to enforce my perfect peace. In my terror, we made a terrible miscalculation. We judged this new life not as a part of existence, but as a corruption of it, a fatal flaw. My old guard, the Aesir, who embodied all of my rigid principles, could only see this internal fire as a betrayal, a dangerous, terrible perversion of the perfect, static ideal we held so dear. And so, a grand theatrical trial was held. The verdict was swift, the condemnation absolute. My once perfect servant, now a specter of both ice and fire, was branded in exile and cast out into the dark. But it was in that solitude, wandering the 9 realms, that a new truth was revealed. A truth I had been far too proud, too rigid, to see. My perfect order was a coffin, yes, but the id's pure, unchecked chaos, that was a furnace that would simply consume everything. Neither one, on its own, could ever sustain life. So the conflict couldn't be won, it had to be transcended. And from that exile, a new consciousness arose, one that actually understood the necessity of both forces. This was the birth of the force you call the ego, the cosmic architect, the rational mind that could finally stand between my law and that raging fire, not to extinguish one or freeze the other, but to mediate, to build something new. He was no longer a passive warden. No, he became a necessary gardener. He understood that my iron rhyme provides an essential structure, a foundation, but he also learned to wield the id's chaotic fire as a tool, tempering it, controlling it, and using its heat to burn away all the stagnant, archaic systems that I had so desperately tried to protect. It's the principle of balanced chaos. Sometimes, you see, a meadow has to burn for new life to grow from its ashes, and the ash of my dead, perfect order, it became the very nutrient for a living, breathing, evolving universe. And so, a new equilibrium was finally found. Not one of stillness, but one of life.
a constant, managed dance between creation and destruction.
A kind of weary wisdom was born from all this conflict. I learned that my law wasn't an end in itself, but a boundary. And the id's fire wasn't just destruction, but a catalyst. They weren't enemies after all. They were just two halves of a whole. And so, the architect now oversees this delicate, living balance. He's no longer a warden of my static past, but a constant creator, always weaving the future from the ashes of what was. The cycle of death and rebirth isn't just restored. For the first time, it's finally allowed to breathe. And so, I have to ask you, now that you've heard my story, look inside the universe of your own mind. Who's sitting on the throne? Is it the rigid warden of what should be, the wild fire of what is desired? Or is it the wise gardener who understands that for anything to truly live, it must be allowed to change?